Programming Throwdown, episode 89, From Combat to Code with the Jerome Hardaway. Take it away, Jason.
Hey everyone, as Patrick said, we have Jerome with us. Jerome is a, combat veteran, and he's, started his career out, in the military, and then after that has moved on, and we'll kind of, listen about his story, and also the amazing work he's doing with a group called Vets Who Code. And along the way, he'll be able to tell a lot of us something which I know a lot of people out there are interested in, which is how do we sort of retool? Maybe we've done, one career for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, and we just get this passion to get into software development, get into engineering. How do we go about realizing, that dream? And that's what we have Jerome here to talk about today.
Roger that. Hey guys, how you doing? It's a very, very good day, and awesome to meet you guys. So thank you for having me.
Cool. So why don't you start by kind of walking us through, did you, go in kind of through university to school? Did you go from high school to the military? Kind of what was that transition like? How about military to civilian to coder? Like, kind of walk us through that whole story.
Roger that. It's kind of like military to veteran. Like you're never like back to civilian, and you're just like, hey, you're a civilian, military, veteran, and then while being a veteran, you're a programmer.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was a civilian, back in my younger years, 7 years ago, when I was a wee lass, I ended up going straight into the Air Force from high school. I actually was at a performing arts high school, and I had a scholarship to go to college, but it was in something I didn't have a real passion in. I couldn't see myself, in orchestra and piano and stuff forever. So, and doing crazy things with that. So I ended up opting for the military. And one of the things that kind of happened was I wanted to actually do something. The war on terror was really at its apex at that point. So even though I had high enough scores, I chose to go towards the security forces route. In retrospect, that probably was a silly thing to do, but when you're 17 and, hocked up on testosterone, and
So what was this, like around 2001 or what?
Oh no, this is around 2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I graduated in 2004. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
Right. So that was, I mean, that's true, because so September 11th is what I was thinking of. But then, after that, there was just, there's this sort of this escalation, right? And so when you were getting into it, it was still, it was really hot. It was really heating up.
It was really, we were transitioning from the way we used to do combat operations in the military, which more regimented, to this more dynamic flow. When I look at it from like what I'm doing in tech now to how we were doing in the military, it was very unique on how similar those things were, because it was like agile methodologies and Kanban. It just had long military names. We're using AEF cycles and things like that. When you call it AEF cycle, we call it sprint, right? Some stuff like that. So it was very, very unique in how as I've gone from, as I went from rookie to, being military and a few deployments in under my belt, and as I'm in tech, how that skills and experience transfer has continuously shifted. So, just how things are different. But yeah, so I went in security forces and went to Iraq, went to Kambuka, Iraq, went to Afghanistan, undisclosed location. Doesn't have I don't know if it has a name yet, but when we were there, it didn't have a name. Been South Korea and a couple of other crazy cool deployments that I don't talk about because I don't want to get in trouble.
We don't need someone kicking down the door right now.
I don't know, we don't want things. I don't want anybody in a suit asking me any more questions for a very long time.
Totally.
So Yeah, so I was there. I was in Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and once I ended up decided that I was going to leave the military in 2009, it was under this guise that the DD-214 was going to be my magic ticket. I was
So,
going
sorry, what
to
is that? So I don't actually know what that is. The magic
dodge
tick.
that. The DD, the magic ticket is a joke about Willy Wonka, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's how veterans treat their DD 214. Basically, DD 214 is the paperwork that you get when you leave the military that states that, hey, you have fulfilled your service in the military. It is, it's your magic ticket because, like, once you have your successful term, if you're honorably discharged, it basically opens you up to all your veteran benefits like GI Bill, GI Bill, veteran housing loans, stuff like that, veteran business loans, stuff like, it's all those systems that, it's a magic ticket to, hey, I can go out here and do amazing things. What they did not tell me was that at the time when I was getting out, because, the bubble thing is real and there's no more concrete bubble than the military bubble. So they didn't tell me when I was leaving in the military. I said there was this thing called the Great Recession going on.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going that was. I was like, skipping out the gate. And what was going on when I was out, I really, I was getting this thank you for your service, but your skills aren't we don't have anything for you, or you don't have the skills for it.
So just to give some back, like what did you go into the Air Force to do?
I was security forces. Essentially, it's a combat security career field.
Got it.
Yeah. So when you spend, half a decade carrying an M4 carbine and a 9mm, when you get out of in the civilian sector, unless you're doing that, there's not really a lot of jobs that are open up to you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I was 2009, 2010. I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm being told that, thank you for my service, but you're essentially useless in the civilian sector. Don't like that. That sucks. Mm-hmm. What do I do to fix it? I happened to see this commercial on Facebook about like learning how to code. Like they had some guy that was like, I think he was in the Miami Heat. He was a like tall guy.
Oh, okay.
And I guess he was a computer science major as well, but he played basketball now. They had Mark Zuckerberg in it and Will.i.am. Do you remember that annoying code.org commercial with Will.i.am in it? You're like, shut up, Will.i.am.
I never saw that, but I can I'm picturing in my head, somebody with a really high pitched auto tune voice, telling me to learn C++. It's like, I don't know.
It was a high pitch, but Will.i.am is just annoying. Like, so please don't. If Will.i.am, you're listening, no hard feelings. Don't at me IRL or on Twitter.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, what is this programming stuff? I actually happened to have had a book that I picked up randomly while I was overseas. I just had it with me about databases. And I was like, what is this? And I was doing some research, had this book, decided I was going to go through this SQL stuff that was in this book. About 6-7 months later, had my first job working in the Department of Homeland Security as a database analyst, scripter, admin of sorts, with the Department of Homeland Security. Fast forward to that, I end up going to a nonprofit and working there as a quote unquote marketing assistant. But if you ever worked in the business of nonprofits, if you're the youngest person at the nonprofit, you end up handling all the technology stuff, because it's just like nonprofits are essentially like, classical nonprofits, as I like to say. Mm-hmm. They're essentially like going to your grandmother's house or your grandpa's house. Like, you need to already know the Wi-Fi password, if they don't know how to work the VCR.
Yeah, the VCR is blinking 12. I was just thinking that. I go to my parents' house and it's still doing that. My dad thinks it's a Zenith 12, and I just don't. He's 70 years old. I don't want to break it to him, But yeah, I mean, I don't want to tell him that. I'm afraid if I set the time that he's just gonna, end up wandering somewhere.
Yeah, so I was there thinking I was going to be doing a lot of design, social media marketing, things like that. And they were like, "Hey, you're young, fix our website." And I looked at this website. It was like something that was outside of like Jurassic Park. Like it was still like a '90s style
Oh
website.
no, it's like GeoCities.
Yes.
The
So
flowers
then
follow the mouse cursor around.
yeah, it was horrible, just sad, like sadness all around. So I spent 3 months going through that, learning PHP because this is, I think, this is 2011, 2012. So this is before the quote unquote big JavaScript boom. We haven't, Node.js hasn't like dropped like, when he dropped Node.js, it was like when Drake dropped his like mixtape, right? We all went like everybody went crazy. Yeah. So see, you know that analogy. So we were doing that with PHP and a CMS content management system. I'm trying not to use acronyms because some of the people who are listening may be students.
Sure.
And I was like writing the worst PHP code you could imagine, had no ideas about styles, any of that stuff, learning color theory and design psychology and UX, all on the fly. Really enjoyed it, really loved it. Found out, like, kind of started finding that my passion was, UI and UX engineering from that, experience. In 3 months, I had the first iteration of I guess back then, modern web. But if you look at like what modern web is now, like that, now that's an ancient artifact, right?
It's really interesting how in hindsight, you could kind of put the pieces together. So you have this background in music, which is about sort of art and symmetry. And then you have this whole sort of experience in the military. And then you come back and you're doing web design, again, kind of focused on front end and being able to build sites with symmetry and art and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. See, I think there's a book out there, and they talk about like the most successful people in industries, like the Elon Musk of the world. They have a unique ability called skills transfer, challenge transfer, whatever you want to call it, in which they're picking up things and they're applying instead of trying to learn it from a whole different point of view. They're using what they learned in their past and doing a knowledge transfer of those skills to apply it to the other things. That's something that helped me with learning how to program. I kind of broke down, like when I was in the military, I broke down how learning my M4A1, like how you would break down learning sheet music. And then when I was learning how to code, I broke down the understanding of front-end development or full stack development now, the way you would break down the understanding of a weapon. And that's how I teach my veterans as well. I break it down from the concept of, we're starting with the most basic concept. So it's like terminal, then so I'm teaching command line or terminal. Then I'm teaching how to use Git. Then while we're doing Git, we're also going to be learning how to use Git flow. And then while we're using Git flow, we're also going to be learning Kanban. And then once we move on from that, we're going to move on into the Chrome browser. Then once we go from Chrome browser, we're going to also start doing the debugger. And now that we're doing that, now we're going to go to our text editor, because text editor uses the same tools that the debugger use, such as console and things of that nature. Then from now we're in a text editor. Now let's start learning HTML. Now let's start learning CSS. Now let's start learning JavaScript, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's how I've been, that's how I train. That's how I train myself. That's how I teach, a very regimented way. So that way, I can focus on the fundamentals, and each skill grows upon itself. And, you're always using that skill like to do something else, right? So that's just basically what helped me, keep moving my career forward and things of that nature. Fast forward to
So what about one of the big issues I think in tech, and this might be even more broad, it's probably more broad than tech, but it affects tech I think the most right now, is that there isn't really a solid accreditation. And so for many places, what you have to do is you have to get this 4-year degree where you learn, art history and sociology and these things which some people appreciate and some people don't, but they're not relevant to being able to build a solid website, right? So not everyone necessarily wants to go the academic route to get into web design or any field like that. And at the moment, the whole trade school idea of tech is just still kind of at the sort of, baby phase, right? And so I think this is one of those areas where, people in the military who have sort of this like kind of that sort of culture and that knowledge base, kind of are at this disadvantage because people are just kind of looking for that certificate, right? So
that is a big problem.
Yeah. What would you tell employers, that something that sort of, you can wrap a lot of military folks around and say, this is some unique skill set that, just about everyone from the military, just about every veteran can bring to the table. What are some things that you kind of learned in the military that any tech employer would really love to have, right?
Professionalism, being calm being calm when there's a situation going on, like even if you don't know what's going on, being, attention to detail. Those are all things that you need in programming or anything in tech that, you're taught like in the first 3 months in the military, because, we hold attention to detail very high because, our jobs, lives are at stake. So, while people are, you're at Facebook and your attention to detail may cost someone money, in the military, your lack of attention to detail may cost someone, their life. So that transfer of that, that works well. I think you hit the nail on a lot of the things that I tell both employers and students right on the head, though. When you said skill set, I tell people it's a skill. So don't worry about the curriculum. Don't worry about the certificate. Like, we don't give certificates of basic code, right? Because because I'm like, no, this is a skill. What you get into it is what you'll get out of it. That's just the nature of the beast of programming. You have to, it's no different than, working out. It's no different than if you wanted to do ballet, if you wanted to learn how to play the piano, if you wanted to learn how to paint, if you want to, just the same way with driving. Like, now, how many of us, when's the last time you thought about driving when you were driving?
Yep. It's just unconscious.
Yes, because you've been doing it forever. You've been repeating the same concepts and same maneuvers every day for years. That's the same way programming is, right? So it's a game to game out. World champions aren't made because they, go and get a certificate, or, the best mixed martial artists in the world. They are not the best because they got a black belt and then they stopped. They're the best because they kept training every day. My favorite, the first book I make most people who want to say join are, it's not truly an executive team. It's like once you go from troop in training to like community member, and you're doing things in the program and on the product side. The first thing I have them listening to is Jocko Willink's Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual, Volume 1.
Oh,
and
nice.
One of his chapters. Yeah, it's my favorite. One of his chapters is like every day is Monday, which means, you have to arrive and show up every day and be ready to give it your best, right?
Yep.
There are no days off. And that's how I look at programming. Like, you have to learn things like that. I try to tell people I'm not special in any way, shape, or form when it comes to programming. I don't feel like I'm some, rock star programmer. I've been in the game, I think 6 years, maybe, professional, since getting paid with the term programmer in my title. If I go back to when I first started writing code, longer than that, maybe 7, 8, 9 years. Mm-hmm. But, 5 years of getting, oh yes, he is definitely a programmer. He's officially a programmer. Like, I feel like you're a programmer when the check says you're a programmer.
Yep.
So that's just like, I know there's people like, you're a developer when you decide that you're a developer. I'm like, I'm a developer when someone pays me to do it. Like, that's how I felt.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's totally right that the people, practice that skill every single day. Like, I'm trying to get more into exercise for health reasons. If anyone's seen a picture of me, I'm a skinny guy. I'm not going to be, professional bodybuilder. I can barely, lift stuff. It's a little embarrassing when I go to the gym, but that's fine. But I was watching this video of this person who is a professional bodybuilder, and he said, I go to the gym every single day. He said, on Christmas I'm at the gym. He said, on my birthday I'm at the gym, and I think that's there's so many things in life where you kind of you start off in this state of, like, let's say, unconscious ignorance. You don't know even what to know. Then you learn, okay, I need to learn, let's say, Node.js. So now I set this bar. There's Node.js. I don't know what it is. I need to figure it out. And then you say, okay, I've learned it. I can write some basic things. I have one computer that's always on Google or Stack Overflow helping me, and the other computer is where I write my code, or two screens. And then you get to that state of unconscious understanding where you can just open up, a text editor. It doesn't even have to have the highlighting, and just start writing code because you've been doing it for so long. And just like any skill, my uncle was a carpenter, and he would tell similar stories about that skill. And I think it takes a ton of effort, but the best people have learned to sort of get the most out of kind of every hour and have the dedication to put in all of those hours.
You're absolutely right. That's why I tell even from our entry level on our program to even when I'm talking to hiring managers, I'm like, you're going to get more out of somebody that shows a willingness to work than someone that has an aptitude for it. Because those people who, particularly those people who are willing, the way we do it is that we have pre-work. It's the lowest metric that I think I could find. There's no fancy code challenges, nothing like that. We have pre-work where you need to do this stuff in order to get an interview to be part of it to code. And, you'd be amazed how many people don't want to do that. And the ones who do it, they end up coming in and becoming super successful and reaching their goals. Well, that's because the first thing that we do is we're saying, hey, you have to work. There's that saying that success looks, luck looks a lot like work to people. And that's what people, they're not lucky. And it's the same concept at BWC. I try to let them know, every day I am writing code, I'm reading code, I'm watching videos on code. My favorites, Google recommends stuff. There's nothing I can't type that, Google will recommend something code related to it. Nice. I'm always on Medium. I'm always on GitHub. I'm always on Stack Overflow. Front-end masters has become, I have this philosophy of making your homies your heroes. Your heroes your homies, right? So front-end masters is like my go-to for years. And now I'm such a big proponent of front-end masters, and that they became a big fan of my work. And now they're giving my troops free front-end masters accounts, right?
Oh, cool.
So it's like that. Yeah. So it's cool that I'm able to pass that on, but that's how steadfast of a fan I am of always learning, always improving. Same concept with my board members. I have made, Seth Shaw, he was one of my first board members that I brought on. And I was his biggest fan because I learned Ruby the hard way, learned Python the hard way, things like that. We ended up becoming friends, and then he joined my board. These are because I am always trying to ingrain these skills in my life. Even my house, I have I think 12 of the lights. And here I have Google Actions set up using JavaScript.
Oh,
and
nice.
Then I have Google Home set up, and I'm working on all this stuff.
So is it like a voice thing where you say, like Star Trek, turn on the living room, and it just does it?
Trying to figure out a name for it. We picked Hyperion, but it does we're trying to find a cool name for it. But it's nice. A lot of voice activated stuff. We have also we're using a what is it called? These IoT things always get away from me.
Oh,
we're making it
not
Arduino, the other one, I think.
There's Raspberry Pi.
Raspberry Pi,
yeah.
There you go. So we're taking a Raspberry Pi and we're going to make a smart mirror as well. And we're going to connect a smart mirror to the APIs that we're building in JavaScript and the APIs that we're using. There's so much stuff that I'm just I try to incorporate the things that I'm learning and trying to master to every level of my lifestyle, right? And that's why I try to push to my troops. even like when they do their final projects, they ask me what they should do. I'm like, you're the product, you're the project. Like you're so interesting. If you weren't interesting, Facebook wouldn't be free to everybody, and they wouldn't be like doing everything for ads, right? So I was like, you're interesting, like, but look at yourself, like you're boring to you because you're you every day. But when you break down, like I make like this week, right? It's our 4th week of a new cohort. And one of the things that they had to do was they had to write a JavaScript object, and they had to write in that object property value of everything about them, right? So everything about them. And I was like, so some of these people have these giant objects called you or their name, and they're doing like one troop has you, and their object is like 100 lines long. So I'm like, yeah, I love it. So now we're going to teach you how to put add variables, do functions, .map, .reduce, all this stuff. So that way you can manipulate this data about you to be able to tell a story and put this information where you want it. Like, this is going to be like your first step. Like now you're using this giant object, and then you're going to move on into using JSON objects instead of this giant object. Like, here, this is a monster. You shouldn't be doing this in production level code. And then we're going to move on to using APIs, because this is how the natural progression of that, right? But you're
very cool.
So like that's just how I'm always trying to push them to think of themselves in that concept of
try and walk us through like Vets Who Code. So you were a developer. At what point did you say, I want to? It probably was in your mind the whole time, but at some point you said to yourself, I'm more useful as sort of like a conduit, or someone who can really get other people off the ground. And so at some point you had to kind of, quit your day job and go straight to Vets Who Code. Kind of walk us, actually, I don't think we've explained Vets Who Code too. So kind of walk us through that whole story. I think it's fascinating.
Roger that. It's funny. It's like, oh, fake news. Like the best part about Vets Who Code is that it has helped my professional career. I've not had to stop working. And nice. I work at CBS as a software engineer. I work on I got my dream job because of the work I've done with Vets Who Code and building things. Comicbook.com. Like, I don't know if you guys probably know enough about me like that, because I don't let my geek flag. But I am the biggest Captain America fan that I have been a Captain America fan since at least July of 2007. So I'm a huge Captain America fan, and I have a ridiculous, embarrassing amount of Captain America stuff. I'm not going to get like that.
That's awesome.
Podcast, because I don't know y'all like that. Y'all don't make fun of me.
Well, I don't want to get hit with a shield or anything. So,
well, we ain't IRL. So. But yeah, so the things that I needed. The best thing about Vets Who Code was, and simultaneously working, because I've been employed the entire time, was I didn't want an organization where I was building something and taking it. I wanted to do the future of nonprofits, and then when it came to technology, the biggest when I was I don't know if people can tell know this. I'm a minority in the South, so you have those disparities that come against you, and we think
for people who are listening, Jerome is African American. Just because people are listening might not know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about? So you have those disparities, you have those things you have to overcome. And one of the things you have to do is inequality when it comes to resources, right? So when you're 20 something and you see this problem that needs to be solved, how do you solve it? How do you raise up, the money for a giant building and physical infrastructure and things like that when your dad's not a billionaire or a millionaire, right? You use the tools around you. What was the best tool I had? The internet. So that's what we started. That's how we started. We were one of the first remote nonprofits. Stole it, which is kind of weird when you think about how nonprofits work, because we stole the idea from the for-profit industry. But people are nonprofits are still slow to move to that, because I guess the human condition is still trained to, I need some place physical to feel I'm giving my money to something that's actually there. But I'm the advantages that we've had over physical locations, you just can't compare when you're thinking of like a physical location that's spending $1.3 million to, literally help like maybe 50 people. And we can do the same thing using 6,000, right?
That makes sense. So how did you get started? So at the beginning, did you just notice a lot of your friends, who are finishing their term in the military were also having the same issues that you had?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you saw them kind of walking in your footsteps. Is that what sort of inspired it?
What inspired it was that there was a person who had died because he had took his own life. Because he was like, one of the things that was bothering him and was causing him trauma was the same thing that I was hearing, that I heard when I came, to be in the middle out the military, in regards to thank you for your service when I qualified. He was doing everything he could to retrain into the type of job that he had while in the military, which was a mechanic, but the opportunity just wasn't there. So, out of despair, this young man took his life. And I was like, what can I do to help this family? Because the way that things were set up, the VA wasn't going to help this family bury him. So I started fundraising for this family and using technology, raised 10 grand in like 27 hours. And we were able to help this young man, help his family, and, help them set money aside for his young daughter. So that's how, we did it. Then people were looking at me like, all right, what else are you going to do? And mind you, I think people don't understand that I'm like 26, 27 at this time. I'm stupid. I'm not Mark Zuckerberg levels. Like, people make me out as a genius, and I'm like, no, I wasn't there. I'm never there. I was never that guy. Like, this is all accident. And I was like, oh, what? I don't know what I'm gonna do. So what am I gonna do? And I was just thinking, I was like, well, one thing that's the most impactful thing to me is gaining control and understanding of technology. So I want to be able to do more of that with other veterans, right? Teach veterans about, help veterans get this skill set so that way they can do things and change the world moving forward. And so that's where this idea came.
That makes sense. I'm a firm believer of this idea that productivity is actually the root cause for a lot of other things. Like, in other words, it's very difficult to make somebody happy or to make somebody wealthy or to make somebody really anything directly. And often if you look at the people who win the lottery and then they're
still miserable.
Yeah, they're miserable,
Yeah.
and then they also blow it all. I mean, you hear so many stories. It's almost like this Schadenfreude. We like to sort of laugh or have a chuckle at that. But the reality is you can even just helicopter drop a bucket of what somebody wants and it just will not work. But productivity is that one thing that I think is the cornerstone for really everything else. Everything else is kind of built around that. And so when you take somebody who's in the military, who's part of that system, and now they're not in that system anymore, I think that seems like one of the biggest identity shifts that you could really do. It's one of the biggest identity shifts in humanity right now.
Yeah, well, people want to know that they are worth something, right? People want to know that they contribute. People, from relationships to the job, people want to know that on some level they're part of something bigger. And they're contributing positively to things, right? They don't want to be, the exact opposite, right? Well, most people don't. So, when we were initially starting, we were thinking of it the old school way of doing things with like partners and stuff like that. But like I said, biggest caveat was the South. And I don't know if you guys understand about the South. We are like, on average, 2 to 5 years behind what like East Coast and West Coast is doing when it comes to tech. So when I was learning things from my New York colleagues, I spent like 6 months in New York and trying to bring down the South. I was essentially speaking Greek to everybody. Like, no one knew what I was talking about. So I was having this problem in which I was involved in a community that was in 2000 late, and I'm in the future. So like, how do I help people regardless of the constraints of region? And how do I help people start with other constraints of their communities and, you know, what they are like. They are nuggets. Are, you know, the thing about veterans is because the military, they, you know, we get shuffled all over the place. So a guy who, like me, may be from the South, but now he's in Ohio, or a guy in California may now be in Detroit or in Mississippi or something because of their military journey. So how do I help people and not let things like region, community, location, any of that stuff, like government, none of that stuff get in the way? And it was like the internet, right? So the first thing we did was, after doing the website, was we started a Slack channel. Second thing we did was start a GitHub organization, and we just kept moving on. Like, what do we need to do to start a nonprofit organization, a nonprofit remote company? What did WordPress do? What did Basecamp do? Those are our two biggest models that we used. Mm-hmm. We use Automatic and Basecamp because, as people know, Basecamp, Automatic, they're two of the most successful, like 80 to 100% remote companies on the market, right? So that's something that I really strongly wanted to emulate. I do not, you know, if, you know, DHH can create Ruby on Rails and, you know, create something that ruled programming for, you know, darn near a decade, then, and from his basement and from his home in Germany or Switzerland, and then become like a Formula One driver in his spare time. Like, yeah, I'm sure I can help veterans get their passion and skill up in programming, right? And of course, I have natural progression of us initially going into Ruby on Rails because we were like, hey, you know, Ruby on Rails already was very remote work friendly. But the thing that was happening, particularly in the American markets, was that because code schools were doing Ruby on Rails as well, and they, you know, code schools were more capitalistic, so they were just, you know, jamming out these, quite frankly, subpar Rubyists, and they were saturating the market to the point where people were not hiring entry-level Ruby on Rails developers, which helped us actually find, you know, we were looking at things. Node.js had just dropped like a Drake album by this time, and I was looking at how, even though I was a professional Rails programmer at the time, when I was getting contracts, it was Rails, and like I was getting contracts and people were asking me more JavaScript questions and Ruby on Rails questions because React was coming in and people liked using React with Rails. So I was like, well, I'm getting more and more questions even on these Ruby on Rails jobs about React and JavaScript than actually using Ruby or Rails. Like they don't even care about that stuff. Like, there's something here. So I went to my team and I was like, hey, yo, guys, we're just gonna drop the whole Ruby area. It's too hard to teach to people who are on Windows machines. We either got to get them to dual boot it, or it's just a nightmare, right? And you know, it's just we get so busy having to teach the framework that it adds like 6 extra weeks. Like you know, we were doing 18, 20-week courses because, you know, we had to teach the framework as well as programming fundamentals because, you know, Ruby on Rails is magic. So you really can't, you know, it's what computer programming fundamentals are. And then, you know, like when it comes to architecture and things like that, design architecture, then there's Ruby on Rails. Ruby on Rails does all that stuff for you. So you don't really have to care about
design. Yeah, I mean, they have all the scaffolding and they set up the plugins for the databases. I mean, it's awesome, but it's a lot to learn at once.
Not only that, it hinders you. Like it's same like when I was first starting, it was the big Ruby on Rails, Bootstrap, Angular drive, right? And they did a lot of the heavy lifting for you so you can make things. And what we noticed was that because of that, you were losing a lot of the little things that, you know, would make you in the long run, like it was more about productivity and getting you able to quickly do things to showcase to an employer so they take a chance to get a job versus taking the time and making sure you had the fundamentals down and you were clean, crisp, and able to solve problems. So that's one that like we teach MERN-Stack and Jamstack, but that's like the last like 6 weeks of the cohort, and we focus heavily on JavaScript the whole time. The reason why we teach MERN is because we're able to focus heavily on JavaScript. And same way, like we don't do any like CSS frameworks, none of that stuff, because like, I'm about, you have to, I'm not so stickler for purists. I'm being a purist. I love CSS frameworks. They make the job so much easier. It's just that in here, you need to focus on, like, this is sparring, right? This is the boxing gym. You can't cut corners in here, because you cut corners in here, you're going to get exposed in the ring, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's how I approach it.
What about like, getting back to, so now people kind of have an understanding of Vetsu Code. So it's this service that you provide. Is it online, or do people physically come to a classroom?
We are having our first IRL cohort in Nashville. It's terrifying this year, but because like it's the one thing I didn't want to do ever, and like
yeah, that's right.
Comcast gave me $10,000 to do it. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm setting this up now.
Nice.
So it's like now I'm doing all this work to make sure that Nashville has their own BWC cohort, like always going on. Like, so that way, if I move, I'm like, okay, you guys are, I've done my, good deed in community. So we're doing that, but most of our classes are online, and we do that because, it helps us find the type of troops and people. It's more so like we don't want to confine people who are willing to do the work because of locale. One great example of that is we have a student named Andrew, an alumni, Andrew James. And he, when he first met me, I thought he was a troll. He reached out to get more information about Vetsu Code, and, he needed someone to help mentor him and get him on his goals. And he was in Finland. And I was like, you're ISIS. Let me block you. Like, so he hit me up on Twitter, because he first hit me up on LinkedIn. I was like, block. Then he hit me up on Twitter, like, hey, no, I'm a real person. Stuff like, you're lying. Like, all right, let's get on the Google. Let's get on the chat.
He starts asking you questions about, aircraft you saw, things like that.
Yeah. So we're on this Google video chat, and I'm like, okay, you're a real person. You are you. You're not trying to don't ask for no secrets, because I don't have them. But he turned out like he had a very unique story. He got a contract to work overseas in Finland, made the love of his life, stayed 5 years, was about to marry her. But his family with his mom, dad were older, they were sick. He wanted to come back home, but he realized he didn't really have a quickly transferable skill to get a job when he came back to America. So this is Vetsu Code comes in. And while he's overseas in the middle of nowhere, to me, right? Finland is probably awesome, but to me, it just sounds cold when I say the name.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at the top of Finland, you're having a chilly time.
Yeah, like he was telling us, people put their it's so cold that people just they go through a mini depression, but they also put the babies out there during the cold so they can get acclimated to it quicker. So people put babies. Yes, I know, right? When I was like, for real,
my parents told me that in Italy, where my parents are from, they would throw babies in the water to get them acclimated to swimming. I mean, of course, they'd go catch them, but it's like you'd be 1.5, 2 years old, they just throw it in the water.
This is abuse. In America, this is child abuse.
Yeah. I mean, if I did that, here, they'd have me facing a wall,
no. Don't do what your Italian relatives do. So we were going through this process of training him while there, and then he started doing the visa work for his significant other, and they ended up coming here. He ended up doing more training while here. He had to spend a few time doing some apprenticeship stuff while going through that process. Ended up getting his first job as a senior software engineer in Dallas at Verizon. So we were like, cool. Holy crap, your first job and you're a senior? That was not my first job in tech. And that made me super happy, because I was like, my troops are getting jobs that are way bigger and cooler than my first job out the gate.
Tell us about that. I mean, let's say, so obviously there's going to be some employers where you show up, you say, high school degree, time in the military, Vetsu Code, I have the skills, and they just say go home, right? There's going to be other people.
That's the I think that's a big misconception. being misconstrued.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not just, hey, they're just VWC troops. We focus on making sure they have the things to showcase their work. Like, oh, their GitHubs are fleshed out, their code pins are fleshed out. They're able to answer the questions intelligently. We are training them in programming fundamentals. Like there's a section of our cohort
Mm-hmm.
where they're just focusing on computer science by itself, right? And then they're building from week 1 all the way to week 16. And they, from the gate, if we focus on one language, so we can focus more on fundamentals and paradigms that are in computer science versus jumping from language and language framework.
Mm-hmm.
So that way they can get better. And because I think hiring managers, Facebook is one of them as a great example. Hiring managers are getting better and getting smarter, and they're realizing that the degree doesn't mean anything. Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, they've all dropped the degree, the mandatory degree aspect of like getting a job there. So they're learning that the things that they do, like while it takes a unique level of aptitude to get to the level, now that's just at that level, right? Those are the big three in the organization. Like, that's the Thor, Captain America, Iron Man.
No, yeah. Obviously, there's I'm not saying that companies as a whole do that, but I'm saying, there's going to be someone out there, some hiring manager out there who has that bias, right? And so one of the things I've noticed from just talking to a lot of people who want to sort of make this switch is that it's one of these things. If you get it in your head, you can kind of make it. It can kind of feel more real than it really is, right? And so I think a lot of it is about, interviewing well, and also about having sort of that confidence, while the industry is kind of going through this transition. Because as you said, it wasn't more than maybe 5 years ago they were having degrees as a requirement. Now they're not. How do we sort of give people the confidence? I think you kind of hinted at this with, building a really solid GitHub portfolio and things like that. But what do you sort of teach? Maybe it's the last lesson or something like that. But what do you teach at the end to say, this is how you walk into an interview and walk away with a job?
Well, see, that's the thing. We don't teach that at the end. We teach that at the beginning because, it goes back to discipline equals freedom, right? Mm-hmm. If you're anxious, if you don't feel like you belong, if you're going to fail if you don't do the work. And that's the secret, right? VWC, our Slack channel is filled with people who are, experts in the industry. Everywhere we have everyone from engineering managers at Google Cloud in there, people from Facebook, Microsoft, there to help you. And our curriculum's designed around like what it requires to build a production level product in MERN-Stack and Jamstack that these companies would like be appreciative of. And we put you on production level code. We go through that. So with people that I've always said, do the work. The confidence comes from doing the work. Because I'm a combat sport fan, I always go back to combat sports, right? Mm-hmm. Mike Tyson wasn't confident because, he was buff. He was confident because he had years and years of experience of knocking people out. So he knew that he could do it.
Have you seen, were you a big fan of early UFC, like UFC 1, UFC 2?
Oh, yeah, I've been,
It's unbelievable. it's been a long time since I saw that, but I remember watching some of those, and, there were no weight classes. They didn't wear mouth guards. There's basically no reason you get elbowed to the back of the head. It's just insane back then. And Mike Tyson was insane. It's just, I don't know if we'll ever get back to like those days were just wild.
Oh yeah, well it's good. But going back to that analogy, when you think about the Gracies, they had the confidence to compete with that regardless, knowing that there was no, there was no protections because of literally generations of putting in the work. So when it comes, I fully believe that confidence is a byproduct of, knowing your stuff, right? So that's where that whole analogy comes from. Like if you're pushing code every day, you're writing code every day, you're studying, if you are obsessing about this at least 2 to 4 hours a day, I try to tell them like, at least dedicate 25 minutes to this. Like every day, 25 minutes is a small price to pay for programming that especially like in this current era when it comes to JavaScript in general, it's, this is the golden era of JavaScript education and tools. Like 80% of the best stuff out there is free. The other upper echelon of that stuff that isn't free, I mean, they're always doing discount codes and sales on, like, and you have syntax, so you can listen about JavaScript and things about the industry while driving. When it comes to JavaScript, you have guys like you guys doing programming Throwdown, getting tidbits. Like, we're in the golden era of programming where people are just literally looking all over the place and like to give you the tools, like hand deliver them to you almost. When I started, that wasn't, it was still like kind of like the Wild Wild West kind of elitist stuff going on. Well, so I'm like, there's no excuse. Like, just do the work. Be willing to do the work, take the bruises. Like I said, it's a skill. So every day is a Monday, and some Mondays suck. So you have to understand that, and you have to be able to, put one foot forward in front of the other. I understand your goal is to get simply 1% better versus trying, like, you're not going to become a programmer every night, but 1% is different. It's going to change every time. You look at it as that 1% changes incrementally, like from day to day. And 1% today is going to be able to build, actually, remember HTML, how to put HTML on there. Like, then tomorrow your 1% is you're going to know the command and image with HTML on there. Like, you don't even think about it. 1%, and after that, it's not only you're going to be able to do all that, you're also going to know all the things you need to change for web accessibility purposes. The 1% after that is not only going to be able to do that, you're going to be able to scaffold the CSS and the styling as easy as you can. So 1% changes incrementally if you're doing the work. And that's where the confidence comes from. And that's where being able to, answer the questions and get the skills like you need for the interviews, as well as, like VWC, we don't leave it just up to them. Like, we connect them with a mentor. Like, after block 1, which ends tomorrow for them, we start assigning them mentors based upon their strengths and weaknesses, right? So that's one thing. Like, Twitter is like a gold mine for being able to find mentors, being able to read people's journeys and seeing where they were 10 years from now. And like in The Secret, Sarah Drasner, she tells this story about how this art teacher, this pottery teacher, told 2 groups in the classroom that there's that you can be graded 2 ways. Whoever does, one group you have to do at least 50 pots in order to get an A. In the other group, you have to give me a perfect pot. But the problem was the ones who did the 50 pots turned out higher quality work than the people who were theorizing the whole time and just trying to get the one perfect pot. So you have the same way with code, right? You have to constantly build, constantly show up, constantly do things that may not be your best work to get to your best work, right?
Yeah, there was this, I can't remember the gentleman who said this, but the idea was so I think they talked about it in terms of art. They said if you have a really good eye for art, you just are a natural, then the first thing you draw is going to look so much worse to you than someone who doesn't have a good neck. And actually, Patrick and I have talked about this. I mean, I have no musical ability at all. And I got this app where you could kind of just with your finger on the iPad kind of make different melodies. And they all sound amazing to me. And I wanted to send it to all my friends, and I realized, wait a minute, I have zero talent. It just looks amazing, sounds amazing to me because I have zero talent, right? And the opposite is also true. The people who have a really, really good eye and have a good passion for software engineering, the first thing they write might really, really disappoint them. But that's where they have to realize sort of that paradox exists. They have to kind of push through and get better and better. Yeah,
that's the secret. The secret of confidence is, confidence is a skill. Like, everything, when it comes down to a lot of things that we experience are skills. And the only way you get them is you build them. Like, even with interviewing is a skill. You have to practice interviewing. That's one of the things we do at VWC. We let them practice interviewing. We do mock interviews. When I have my one-on-ones with people, I'm like, hey, I want to go through some mock interview drills. Like, I like those who are still looking in the process of getting a job, or if they're looking to get a new job. Like, hey, okay, send me your resume. Let's see what's going on. All right, let me look at your LinkedIn, things like that. Like, that's where the whole mentorship aspect comes in. Like, having somebody that's gone that way helps you, but you still got to do the work, right? And that's how you grow and how you get better. right? So I just, like I said, we have a saying in BWC called skills pay the bills. And like, that's how I look at it, is like what you do. Vetsu code and coding is very similar in the idea that you get out what you put in. It's not the other way around. You know, you can't show up a few times and then expect someone giving you a $60,000 job, 70,000, 80,000. No, you know, what you're willing to put in the work is what you're going to get out. People look at my trajectory and they think it's like, you know, super speed and like fast. And like, you got to understand, like, for over a decade, or like, I guess I like to say half a decade, because I don't count the first, especially at, you know, when I was at the Department of Homeland Security, as like legitimate programming, because it was just database stuff. But I've been obsessing over this. So when I'm not working, when I'm not at work working and looking up solutions, I'm at home looking up solutions for Vetsu Code. I'm time boxing things. I'm teaching the things that I use at work. I'm applying the things I use at work to my nonprofit. I'm taking the same tools that I use at work that I find I love, and I'm coming out of a billion-dollar company and teaching rookies how to use these exact same tools on the level of that a billion-dollar company does, right? So that's where that whole, like, that's the secret sauce. Like, you know, where one thing pays and helps the other, right? You know, the founders of EWC, we all three of us work at really cool places. I'm at CBS, Noel, he's at USAA, Andrew is at USA Today, and we come and we teach people things that we know that works at, you know, this is what works at this level. So this is what we're going to teach you. So that's, you know, we used to teach some things that other people were doing, and we're like, I'm never going to touch Canvas a day in my life. Whole life never touched Canvas on production level code. Not going to teach it. You know, but we teach GraphQL because guess what? People are moving towards GraphQL on production level code. We teach React because people move towards that. We teach Firebase because Firebase works is a great way to, you know, use databases without actually having to do database stuff, and it's very JavaScript oriented. So instead of using MongoDB, we use Firebase, right? It's just an easier way to do it. We focus on JavaScript and ES6. We focus on how to turn jQuery into JavaScript. We do things that, hey, you will have to do this on the job. Like, you go into a job where there's like a 10, 15-year-old code base, you're going to be writing JavaScript out of somebody's jQuery that's going to be poorly documented. One of our board members, Brian Holt, he used to work at Reddit and Netflix, and I was just in channel. I was like, hey, does anyone have any like really crappy CSS files that I can throw at the students so they can focus on debugging, cleaning up, and trying to implement CSS Grid and Flexbox into? Because that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to find, there's going to be some really old code base that needs something that's more modern installed into it for a new feature, and you're going to have to combat those code styles and things like that, how to code defensively and things like that, so you can, you know, make stuff work. And he was like, oh, I think I can find some crappy thing that I was like prototyping once upon a time, one of my old jobs. It's like, yes, awesome, find that, let's do that. That's the style that I work on. I'm like, our lessons and our ideals come from real world experience, right? So it's like, hey, I have been in a situation where you are battling a $18,000 line of code base CSS, and you're adding CSS Grid and Flex to it, but you're fighting a 18,000 line main CSS file over here. So it's so like you're having to write code defensively just to do the work that you want to do, make it show up the way you want it to make it show up. So I try to put those lessons. When I experience something that gives me pain, I'm like, if this does not spark joy, let me make sure that it sparks joy with other people. Like, that's my philosophy, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah, like, you know, it's Vetsu Code is like, you know, breadcrumbs to those who are willing to do the work, right?
So yeah, what about, that's a really good point. So I think, you know, in the case of Vetsu Code, there are some veterans, they're very enthusiastic. They and you give them an amazing opportunity, right? what about there's a lot of civies, there's a lot of people who are students, there's a lot of people who Vetsu code isn't the right thing for them. What would you recommend to them as something that can it could be sort of a good proxy for Vetsu code for people who either aren't veterans or they want to try something different?
See, that's tough because I try to stay in my lane.
Mm-hmm.
So, like first and foremost, like everything that's going to come from me is going to come from the point of view of a veteran who learned how to code and is a JavaScript developer. So it's really hard for me to give like advice like that for if you don't come from that. I can give you the tips and things that I wouldn't say tips, but these are basically literally things that I see that. Here's something that if you focus on, you'll be successful in the resources that I recommend to everyone all the time. First thing I always recommend is pick something that you're passionate about. Like in the end, like the languages don't matter as much as if you're passionate about solving that problem. I don't know if I'd been a programmer if it wasn't for Vetsu code, right? Like, or if it like I tell people that all the time. If I wasn't trying to solve this problem, I don't know if I'd have stayed as motivated as I was. Like, there was no one around motivating me to become a programmer. Like I live in the South where programming is nowhere near the biggest industry. Like in Nashville, it's getting there, especially with Amazon coming in and stuff like that. But when I was in Memphis, it wasn't something, particularly in minority communities, wasn't something that was being like shouted from the rooftops as an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea like what would have happened if I hadn't had something to work towards, something for betterment. Especially when you're with everybody who's around you that knows this or is rooting you on is in New York or they're in San Francisco. Like it's really weird to like I tell people my biggest supporters are all either in New York or San Francisco. I don't understand how this little Southern boy end up getting fans in New York and San Francisco. Like it's cool. Like mama, I made it.
It's the beauty of the internet, right?
Yeah. So but that's the biggest thing. Find something you're passionate about. Like, I chose JavaScript because I truly believe it is what I like to call the working man's tool. Is something that is not, the speed of it and the ideals of it when it was first created to now has made it really hard to be gated by universities because A, universities don't teach it, B, because it's more functional than object oriented. You really can't gate it with like a lot of CS fundamentals because it's functional programming. It's just as much creativity as it is logic. It's right there in every browser in the world, so you have direct access to it even regardless of how crappy your computer is. Like you can have like an old Windows box or the sleekest MacBook out there, and it's still going. JavaScript is still going to work in the browser, right?
Yep.
So that's why I chose JavaScript. It just made everything that I wanted to do with everyone and every tool easier. And we're after the Node.js boom. Like I say, the Drake mixtape drop. And, it just exploded everywhere with React, Ember, Angular, Vue.js, Node, Express, Next, Gatsby. We have the Jamstack, we have Mern Stack, we have Mean Stack, we have Vern, Vue, Merv Stack.
Yeah. I think the beauty of JavaScript is it's so easy to show somebody. You just get a VPS, and you can just easily go to someone and say, "Hey, go to this URL and check out my cool website." It's not, go to the Play Store, have to sign up for this beta version of the app, and then I started it and it crashed. It's the deployment is something where you can immediately, get some feedback. I think it's really important for people early on. For them to show something to your mom and she says, "Wow, that's amazing! I can't believe you made that by yourself," and just kind of get that going.
And like I said, the tools, like, you have CodePen, you have GitHub, you have Replit. Like these three tools are changing the game of like CS education in general.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're just they make it so much easier. They make it easy to showcase what you're doing. So I recommend those 3 tools to anyone on top of Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is getting better. I'm going to be intrigued at what happens with this new CEO shakeup that's going on.
Yep.
Because, even I have been bitten by the inexperienced bug of going in Stack Overflow and expecting people to love me and be happy. I don't know. There's something about Stack Overflow developers and them hating everybody. I'm like, I guess you guys don't drink enough coffee. Maybe you drink coffee black. I'm like, nah, I'm cool on that.
This is true of almost every online community. There's always just a cabal of veterans who are not to overload the term veterans, but a cabal of people who have been in that community forever. And they're usually, hostile is not the right word, just like dismissive. And Stack Overflow is one of those where you could submit a question and someone will just like kill your question. They say, oh, it's too much opinion.
It's kind of like NIMBY, but for tech. It's like NIMBY for tech. It's like not in my backyard. Oh, it's awesome that you want to learn this question, but not over here. Go play somewhere else, little rookie. So I
think it's an artifact of this wave we're seeing where just everything you do is part of some democratic vote. It's like you can't even just tell someone happy birthday without, seeing like how many votes did I get, how many whatever it is, how many hearts did I get on Twitter, right? And so as soon as you kind of put that on everything, I think you kind of create that atmosphere.
Yeah, you create that dopamine hit, and so people are either afraid because they don't think they're smart enough to do it, so they avoid you altogether, or you have these people who are always doing it and they become the rock stars because they built that clout or credentials up, right?
Yep.
But then that's also how, when you do that, the best idea usually doesn't always gravitate towards the top because it's more you've done it in a manner to where it's a popularity contest now versus, hey, let's try this thing.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
The Vets Who Code, so it's a nonprofit, is distributed throughout the whole country or even maybe the whole world. There's veterans all over the world. Are you sort of are you like hiring for teachers or people to help with the website, or what's that situation? If there's someone, let's say, just graduating college and they say, I really want to help out this organization any way I can, what's sort of a way that they can contribute?
All right. So the way we do this is, first of all, it's a pro bono. Like I said, I don't make any money over it. They gave me money and then I put the money right back into the community. Like that's how I do things. Or I put the money in new resources. Mm-hmm. And we're about to grab 2 new companies as sponsors, technology sponsors. That's what happens. They gave me the funds and I spent a bunch of money to make sure infrastructure and stuff is going to be taken care of for the next 5 years for everyone. And then we're adding up 2 new projects now because I was like, oh, we have the funds for it. There you go. Bam, done. When we do the troops work on the products, so that way they can get confidence and, experience in building production level code. I started doing that when I was seeing that, hey, everything that I was building when it came to VWC was helping me. And I'm kind of at a level where everyone already knows that I'm involved with VWC. I can't hide it. I can't go on an interview and people not know that I'm involved with VWC, right? They Google me. Oh, there's you. Tell me more about this. And oh, hey, how you doing? This is awkward. This is a crazy first date. You stalking me already? Okay. So when I was like, you know what, maybe I should let other people drive and focus on the board, focus on the Kanban board and make the issues and the tickets and do the mock-ups and then start start forecasting more. When we 2 years ago started looking at, I wanted to move into React with VWC's web app, but I didn't want to add a complex backend. And Gatsby was just coming up and the rise of Jamstack was just coming up. And I was like, this is what we should do. And so I started putting the tickets and doing the discovery for that and letting the troops drive that. And within I gave them a year to do it. Within 3 months, they transferred the entire stack to Gatsby Jamstack app, right? So and now what we're doing, like we have this new domain we just bought, vetswho.codes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to turn that into a directory. And what's going to happen with that is our new troops that are in our alpha project, our alpha team right now, they are going through learning right now. That's going to be their project. They're going to be building, vetswho.co, which is going to be a directory for everybody that's in the Vets Who Code community. And then the Bravo team, we've already got their next phase of the project, which is going to be focusing on the job board portion of vetswho.codes, right? And then right now, we have like, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the book, Team of Teams?
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
Let me check it. I'm going to add this to my list.
Yeah, General McChrystal, he does that. Like, if you notice, I read a lot of stuff from like generals and stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
Iraq War, Afghanistan War, generals, like how they changed combat was really in a less violent way. When you take away the violence, it mimics a lot of agile and combat methodologies, right? So now we do a lot of things that are teams of teams, right? We have the leadership, quote unquote, team, which is the dumbest thing on earth, because I tell people I'm the most unqualified leader here. Like I want to shoot breeze and drink beer with the rest of you guys. I don't want to be in charge. Why do I have to make rules? Like, just stupid. But we have the people who basically the executive team, and then the executive team is usually a head of their own team. So we have the code pen team. They handle all the code pen stuff, designs. We do things like special, like, we did a New Year's disco ball drop and React.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they handle stuff like that. Got a ton of likes. Everybody loved it. They shared it. CodePen loved it. Everybody was happy. We got pick pen of the day. It was awesome, right? Cool. They even put me on weird things like, did you know there's such a thing as a White Castle Valentine's?
You mean like the burger? White Castle?
Yeah, White Castle does a Valentine's Day dinner, and it's like has a cult following. Did not know that.
Awesome. I know IKEA does one. That's the one I've heard of. IKEA does a Valentine's Day dinner.
They put me on to something brand new, and I was like, okay, so this is real. This is like, this is not like this isn't April Fool's early. Like, what's going on? So, okay, so that's things they do. We have the product team. They focus on keeping the product, basically keeping the web app up, cleaning it up, fixing it, coming up with ideas. I handle the mock-ups for that. I do all my mock-ups in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, because you can design in the browser now, so there's no need for me to open up a Photoshop file ever.
Yep.
So that's what they do. Then we have mentorship team that they focus on, and then within the mentorship team, there are two mentorship teams. One is for current students, and one is for alumni. So we have continuing education mentorship team headed up by Daniel Pritchett, and then we have a troop mentorship team headed up by Mark Locklear. And what Mark handles, he focuses on mentors who are strong in JavaScript to be able to assign them to troops who are learning JavaScript, while Daniel, he focuses on troops who have jobs, and then he lets them go, understand next steps. That it's okay to learn other languages. Like, I'm like dad in the organization. Like, no, we're going to stick to JavaScript. JavaScript we're going to do because that's what we're here for.
Yeah,
but
right.
Daniel's mom, and he's like, no, baby, you can go learn Go. You can don't listen to him. You can do whatever you want to.
Yeah.
So,
what about people, you might have a lot of, I do understand, people in the military are always traveling, right? But there are definitely some people who, especially when you think about veterans, have sort of settled down. And I know that, a few times we've talked about how, all of the sort of programming energy seems to concentrate in a few places, right? Do you feel like that's going to change? Do you tell people to, move to New York or San Francisco? What's the sort of, what's your sort of feeling about that? How's that going to evolve?
Oh, it's evolving now. Like it's super like there's like another Drake analogy. What a time to be alive, right? Because it's already evolving. Like I said, everything's 5 years like behind. And while New York and Silicon Valley is kind of getting code on the coding buzz, now the South and the Midwest are kind of like, oh, we want to be in on this because like I said, I'm a big combat fan. I believe in the fighter analogy. And the best fighters live in boring places like Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Stockton, California make great mixed martial artists because there's nothing else to because there's nothing else to do there. So, like, you're either drinking or fighting. So, like, same concept with like programmers, like Silicon Slopes, or when you're going to Utah, like Utah Pluralsight's there. Brian Holt is from there. You go further north, Ontario, where there's Hamilton, where there's nowhere, nothing to do. West Boss is from there. So the more boring the place, the better the JavaScript developers are. Like that's what I'm learning that. Like the less there is to do, the better the talent. And like that's what's coming down here. Like right, I've gotten 2 opportunities to speak. At conferences with no CFP, they just like, yeah, we would love for you to come down. I'm like, oh, okay. In Mississippi and Georgia, I'm very happy to finally be able to speak in my backyard versus having to go, either to New York or to California for speaking engagements. Although I do have one in Colombia, which is my first international speaking engagement, which is going to be cray.
I thought you meant the college at first.
No, I'm
okay.
talking the country. Cool. It's going to be insane.
Yeah, I think it's, and Patrick and I have talked about this before, but I think the whole remote work revolution, we're just kind of waiting for that shoe to drop,
It's almost there because, in the end, we are one of the few jobs where you don't need to be in the room. And because we require, you ever read the book Deep Work and things like that, like how Bill Gates takes all the books he's going to read in the year and, sprites off into the woods and reads them like in solitude, which is, if you that's a little bit too extreme, but he's a billionaire, so I can't hate.
You must have done something right.
Yeah, maybe here's something too, going into the woods for a week with like every book you're gonna read and then coming out like with all this knowledge. I don't know. He makes more money than me, so I can't, I think it's a weird flex, but okay, but whatever. Like that, the idea of deep work being at home where you're already comfortable and you're able to do that deep work with little to no, interruption, or maybe go to like a co-work space if you have to. Like I'm one of those people where like I am half and half, where like I have to be cut off, but I don't have to leave the house. Like I turn my dining room area into my my remote office when I'm at home because I'm I don't invite people over like that anyway. What I need is big space and big table. Like I don't like people like that.
I think it's like one of the great sort of ironies of Silicon Valley is that we built video conferencing. As much as we have trouble with it and we make fun of it, it gets better and better every year. And now it's so powerful that you can call almost anyone, and yet everyone's trying to pile into a few cities. But I think it will get better.
Not only that, our tools are integrating remote work better. Like my favorite app, right, is Visual Studio Code, text editor, all the plugins.
Super nice.
Yeah, their live share feature now has audio and chat. So we can literally just say, we're going to shut Zoom down. Everybody go to this live share, and we are going to talk and chat while pairing.
Wait, what is? I don't know about this. You can actually stream yourself coding. Is that what this is?
Yes, everybody can jump on live share and pair together while talking at the same time. Like it's amazing. Like wow. It's like I don't know. It's the best thing since peanut butter and jelly was put together.
Patrick and I, we're gonna have to go on Twitch, and maybe the three of us are gonna have to go on Twitch and stream ourselves making something crazy.
Yeah, it's the most like I absolutely love it. I used it today and I was like, man, what a time to be alive. Like, no having to use Skype or Zoom at the same time, or even if you're in Slack, right? You can now from Slack, let's jump on a call and you just press the call feature in Slack and then, there you go. Yeah, we're gonna call in Slack. Okay, this is nice. All right, no having to fire up another app. Like the app companies have decided, the services have made it so that it's so much easier for us to integrate the idea of being human and human interaction into our work, right? Because in the end, that's what the thing was missing with being a programmer, right? Because people tend to think, especially the more collegiate style programmers, they program for computers when the secret is we're supposed to program for humans to understand programming, not for the computer, because the computer is going to compile and run it regardless. So you might as well, code for the person that's going to come after you, right? Computer doesn't care.
Yeah,
So,
there's this saying that, if your code gets peer reviewed, which, if you're on any sort of team that's going to happen, then right off the bat, it's been read by twice as many people than have written it. So you wrote it, but 2 people have read it. And that's before it even goes into the repository. Chances are hundreds, maybe thousands of people are going to read it after that.
Yeah. And that's the secret sauce of programming, right? Programming for human interaction and not for the computer, because the computer doesn't care. Right. But did we not get off on like a crazy tangent? We were talking about trying tips for like people that are in college and stuff.
I think you had a really good point, which was, to find out, sort of what your passion is. One of the ways that I've sort of discovered the things that I are really passionate about is is it something that I can do till 2 a.m. and I'm still kind of excited? I have to kind of force myself to go to bed. And there are things that bring that out of me, but they're not valuable, like playing video games. I could easily play video games till 4 a.m, but so can everyone else. And so I can't, that's not a skill that's really like marketable, right? But honestly, like solving puzzles.
Esports, I don't know. Esports, like they have the first high school esports team just opened up. Air Force has an esports team now. So, and there's a college, like colleges have esports teams. I am also that one dude who cannot do more than like 30, 40 minutes of gaming, because if I do, like I get bored. Like there's no video game that's going to keep me on the game for an hour. I'm like, how? I don't get it. Like my friends, they make fun of me. Like I can't stay on a game for 3-4 hours. So I'm like, you guys, like, when do you guys go outside? Like, when do you guys go to movies? Like, I'm a movie guy. I'm a bruncher. Like, I want to go. Like, my Instagram is filled with food. I don't know anything like. I want to go outside and like I want to eat at that cool new place, or I want to go to like Cheekwood, like understand my city. Oh, there's an Indian spot. Never had Indian before. Let's go there. I'm a fat kid. Like I love cake. So
my parents are the same way. Like my parents love to just take me out when I was little on drives around the town, and I'd always think this is so dumb. Like we would just drive around the town looking for a restaurant that we hadn't been to, and we lived we also lived in the South, and so we'd go to random cities. We'd go to places that were like really out there in the boonies. We'd eat at restaurants where people would look at us pretty weird, because it's just these like pretty Italian people just kind of show up at like a biker bar. But my parents, that was their thing. They could just drive around looking at different restaurants and stuff, and that gave them a lot of energy. So a lot of people feel like they need to find that one thing, that one dream job or dream strength, but it really doesn't work that way. I think, any person out there has a lot of strengths, a lot of things that they could do that would be very fulfilling for them. And it's really just finding out, like, overlaying that on top of the market. Because, the market, good, bad, it's not going to change. I'd love to live in a world where everyone spent, $20K a year on art and they got $20K a year of value out of it, and our artists could be doing great. But the market is what it is. Like, we can't change it, right? So like, look at the sort of things that you could bring to the table and look at the market and say, is there, where is that overlap where I could do the job that I would, be doing for free, but also make, great money?
Yeah, I mean, going back to that analogy of like loving video games, being able to build the games that you would love to play, that's where or fashion. I know so many people like I don't know if you guys ever heard of Ken Wheeler. Ken Wheeler is my favorite person on
No, I
earth
haven't heard of him.
because yeah, because Ken is like two steps like to the left of crazy. Like it's my first favorite play reason, but he has this really storied history of being a high school dropout and then and then going back and trying to go to college and trying to be a rapper and having all these things that he loved but like failed, but found himself learning JavaScript and becoming really, really good at it. And now, he's a Google developer expert. Does all these things, but you would never believe that when you're looking at his code, this is some, dude that one day wanted to be like Eminem, like for real, like, like you look like when you talk to him, you're like, oh yeah, because I make fun of him, like, oh, with sunglasses, he look a little bit like Pitbull, like it's kind of weird, like,
Nice.
but it's just those are the things, like, I have a colleague, she was really big into fashion before she ended up getting into data science, and it was that using like fashion and fashion trends that really helped her focus on that track of data science. So like same way with food, I think that helped me with design, like and learning color psychology and stuff, because like food with different foods with different vibrancies and like things like that, like when you're talking about like your parents driving all over the place looking for restaurants, it's like you get to learn different things about your city just through the food. Like Nashville is famous for its hot chicken, right? Everybody talks about Nashville hot chicken. People never talk about the fact that Nashville is also famous for Maxwell House coffee, because Maxwell House is literally here.
I have a buddy from Nashville who says the ribs, like, I am a big fan of Texas ribs, and he just told me I can't be your friend anymore. Like he said, Nashville ribs are magic.
He is lying. Like, don't listen to him. You can't be his friend because he's lying.
Oh no, it's Memphis. Ribs. Sorry, he said Memphis.
Yeah,
ribs
okay. Memphis ribs are the best. Yeah, Memphis ribs are like Memphis for ribs, Texas for pulled pork, South Carolina just don't even go for the barbecue. It's weird. But like Nashville is also, we have a bar here, like not a bar, it's a cotton candy bar, because Nashville's the home of the creation of cotton candy, and like things like that, like, oh man, it's such a huge thing to like feed your creative juices and like keep you going. Like that's like things for me to help me like learn more about UI and history. I'm all over the place when it comes to like front end development, and how for me like food and cooking, like I've been like this year has been like this secret of like focusing on food science for me, and I've been learning more about development and programming through cooking, because focusing on serious eats and food lab and temperatures and like what makes what meat you could cook with this, or if you're going pescatarian, what type of fish are best for this type of dish, and vegetables and stuff like that, and like mastery of having to make ramen. Like, dude,
do you post about this on your Twitter? Do you post like some of your best recipes, things you've cooked?
I am on the Instagram. Like,
Instagram, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
My personal Instagram is filled with Captain America, my puppy, and like food. Like Captain America, like you would think I'm a Captain America fan who has a dog who likes food. Like that's pretty much all that's on like my Instagram.
That's awesome. That's what should be on everyone's. So what about like people who want to know more about about you, your experience, Vetsu Code, these kind of things? How can people kind of reach out? Should they follow your Twitter? How can people keep up to date with what's going on?
Roger that. I don't really tweet about VWC stuff and JavaScript on Twitter. So at Jerome Hardaway on Twitter, at Vetsu Code on Twitter, the Vetsu Code website. I'm a pretty much open book when it comes to that on Twitter as well. I love having conversations. When it comes to like people that want to help, we have like certain protocols. Like we try to make sure that people who are mentors, they have at least 2 years of experience in the industry, either in JavaScript or something else, depending on where they're at. And when it comes to people touching our product, we kind of only leave the product for the veterans, because, if you get a ticket, then it's going to keep a veteran from getting a ticket.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the best way to be part of that course is to build the next course, right?
or to build something and have it go in production. Like just know that, like, like every time a troop builds something in production, drill sergeant gets his wings.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right. Teach a man to fish, right?
Yeah. Maybe a drill sergeant loses his voice. Maybe we should do that one. That's what people really want.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's like those are like certain prerogatives, priorities, but we're always looking for people who, you fit that criteria, particularly in the JavaScript, when it comes to ES6, things like that, pure JavaScript, the nuts and bolts. Like we're always looking for people who are, who have that experience.
Very cool. Yeah, we definitely, now that the podcast has been going for a while, we definitely have folks who, have been in their career for years. Obviously, there's people who even listen to us from the beginning who are career professionals. And if any of you out there, have a strong background in JavaScript, this is an amazing opportunity to sort of give back, right? And to, you can never underestimate sort of like how important it is to have reciprocity, right? I mean, every time you give something, you always get something back. So if you have that experience, definitely. Personally, I'm absolutely terrible at building websites. I'll be honest. I think it's an amazing skill to have sort of that ability to kind of lay everything out kind of in your mind. Also the whole that full stack client server, all of that. But I think if you're out there and you have that skill, this is just a really amazing opportunity. Hit up Jerome on Twitter, and tell him, hey, I want to be a mentor. I want to try and help out, and I want to teach the next generation. And I think in that way you could really contribute.
Roger that. Yeah, that's the best way. Like we're always looking for people who are willing to help the next generation of veterans learn JavaScript. It's like you said that giving back. It gives when you teach, you become better at what you're teaching, and for that person that's learning, that helps them build their confidence. Like that's where the whole I matter come from. Like someone's investing in me, and veterans are weird like that. Like they need to know that people are investing in them and depending on them for them to get serious. Like I think it's coming from the military where you're accustomed to dealing with that stress of like having the world on your shoulders. Like, oh yes, like if you mess up at work, the missiles don't go down or people don't come back home. Hey, it's the reality of the beast, right?
I had a buddy. I have a buddy who's was in the military, and he was saying he set up Microsoft Exchange, the email servers. He set them up on FOBs, on forward operating bases.
Yeah,
and FOBs. Yeah, and he said, I asked him what it was like, and he said, well, just imagine, trying to set up someone's email, but there's bombs landing. It's like, wow, okay, it's like all these things. The way he said it was very short, but it really kind of created sort of cognitive dissonance, like put everything in perspective,
Yeah, we were, one of my exes, we were going through a first aid course together, but I already went through like a combat lifesaver course like years ago, and I was just flying through it and doing well. And she was mad at me about it because like we just wanted to go through this CPR first aid thing because my nieces and nephews are coming over. Spend a week with me. Oh my goodness, like the military did not train me for that. So I was making fun of her, and I was like, yo, everything you can do, I can do with bombs dropping over me. And she was like, just shut up, Jerome. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to shut up now. So,
That's awesome.
So, yeah, like,
there. Patrick's laughing. Oh, man. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This is absolutely amazing. I know there's a lot of strong JavaScript developers who listen to the show. I really encourage all of y'all to reach out to Jerome. Let us know if you had any other questions for him or anything like that. We tried to cover all the ones that came our way. But you could also just reach out to Jerome directly. He's very accessible.
Yeah, I like giving the tools and things. Like I'm going on a journey right now called I'm calling it JavaScript defatigue, because there's so many resources out there that you can learn from. So I am going to focus on 1 year only this one resource and only the resources that are recommended from this one resource. And I am documenting like my skills based upon that. Like, hey, I'm only doing one thing, and only things that come from this thing. And I'm going to tell you guys my experience from that. So like,
Cool.
especially with JavaScript developers, I love JavaScript developers. Like people are looking to get into JavaScript, like tweet me. I'll let you know what stuff you need to. Focus on this. Don't focus on that. Learn this. Don't learn that. Just go. Like especially front ends. Love front ends. So if you're wanting to like, I feel like there's no more rewarding industry than front end development because in the end, no matter how intricate the back end is, or how big the data set is, or how detailed the data set is, people aren't going to care if it doesn't look pretty, right? Like that's just how people are. Like Facebook is one of the most like when you look at the machine learning and stuff that goes on, like it's insane. But it didn't get there because of machine learning. It got there because people like the experience they have with the app, right? So, because that's how, in the end, people have to like things and people have to want to look at it, right? Same way with any, clothes, cars, anything else. That's the web. So,
Yeah,
it's
makes
like,
sense.
you're always going. It's like being a gate guard or an elite gate guard in the military. You're the first line of defense. You're the first thing that the person is going to see, and like so you have to bring it because your job, how well you do at your job depends on how hard the other guys have to work, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
like
Yeah, I mean, you can
that's
you can have a bad first impression and say, well, that was really unfortunate. But then the next day you're meeting somebody else. But if you have a bad website, your whole company could be gone.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah, there's like I recently found a website that was so bad I almost volunteered to do the site for her, like because I loved her Instagram, like the products she was selling, like I loved her Instagram. I was like, yo, I'm going to buy some of this for my lady because she's gonna love this stuff. Went to the website, I was like, I'm not putting my credit card in this. This looks like that bad neighborhood on SpongeBob. Like no, I'm not gonna do that. Not gonna do that.
that's
No.
awesome. All right. Well,
So,
thank you so much for coming on the show. It's at Jerome Hardaway, and
yeah,
does Vetsu Code have a Twitter, or is that the same one?
yeah, at Vetsuko.
At Vetsu Code. Cool.
Yeah, where the website is vetsucode.io, GitHub repo and GitHub organizations, VetsuCode. We're starting two new projects that the troops are going to start working on. So if you're looking for hiring troops, just check out, or people for speaking in organizations or anything, opportunities, anything, you'll be looking at the vetswho.codes. That's going to be one project we're rolling out, and then we're rolling out our vetswhocode.github.io. So that way, like people be able to keep up with projects and things that we're doing in the organization without having to look at GitHub. We have a
Yeah.
lot of things rolling coming down the pipeline. So very
Very
excited.
cool. Cool. Thanks a lot. And thanks everyone for subscribing on Patreon, subscribing on Audible, using our Audible link to get that. I hope you really enjoyed this interview. I definitely did. I thought I learned a ton about JavaScript. I learned a lot about military service and what that's like. And thank you again for coming on the show, Jerome. And thank you all for listening. Catch you next month.
Thank you guys for having me.
The intro music is AXO by Binar Pilot. Programming Throwdown is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 2.0 license. You're free to share, copy, distribute, transmit the work, to remix, adapt the work, but you must provide attribution to Patrick and I, and share alike in kind.